This is Rocco Pendola from TheStreet. We're doing the first episode of TheBeach meets TheStreet here at Pandora Headquarters in Oakland, California, just across the bay from San Francisco, and we're really happy to have our first guest, Tim Westergren, the co-founder and chief strategy officer at Pandora, kicking this thing off in style, man. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I got to tell you a story. This is good stuff. As the founder, you should be incredibly thrilled by this story. I check into the hotel in San Francisco on Thursday night, and you give the lady the ID. It's a middle-aged Chinese lady, and she looks at my name and says, and she's laughing, so she's making a joke clearly, but she says, "Are you the founder of Pandora, that radio app that everybody likes on the iPhone?" And I laughed and said, "I get that all the time because of my name." I said, "But coincidentally, I'm here because I'm going to have a conversation with the guy that co-founded Pandora, and his name was Westergren." And then she said, "Well, you know what? You should run the company because your name is closer to it than he is." But it's funny, and it's cool that happened. I didn't expect it to happen, but I thought that is, even though it's an anecdote, it really speaks to the level of ubiquity you guys have created for this platform. And I never expected that to happen, but if somebody told me it was going to happen, I wouldn't have expected to happen with her. I would have expected maybe some hipster indie rock guy or something,
Yeah, I mean, when you get to the scale we've reached, it's not just the early adopters anymore. It's grandparents and their grandkids and businessmen and hotel managers and everything in between.
I was at Guitar Center a couple weeks ago to buy a guitar for my daughter, and the guy that is working there is a musician, and of course, we just got to talking. It's so cool. He pulls out the guitar. First thing he does is starts playing Elliott Smith, one of the most difficult guys to play. So I was impressed right away. And we got to talking, and he says, "Yeah, I play, and I got a CD." And I said, "Oh, can I find you on Pandora?" And yeah, of course you can. And I was thinking,
so he knew he was on Pandora.
Well, I just figured that he was, right?
Yeah.
And 10 years ago, he would have burned me a CD. It's not going to be played on the radio. So it's weird. You go to different places, and you might expect it at Guitar Center, but I didn't expect it checking in, at the Marriott. With, I would assume, a 45, 50-year-old lady working at the front counter. So that was cool. One of the things we want to do is I really want to tap into startup culture and the beginnings. And I know you've talked about this before, but I haven't seen it recently, and I think it'll be new information to a lot of people. But I want to go back to the very beginning. From what I understand, kind of like Facebook, this wasn't intended to be a company that has 2 floors and a really big office tower in downtown Oakland. It didn't start as Pandora. I mean, take us to the beginning. How did this thing, where was the seed planted for this thing?
Sure. So the company's actually 13 years old as a business. The idea for it I hatched really over many years prior to that when I was a working musician. So before I did this, I was in rock bands for a long time, and I was a film composer for a while as well, so I wrote music for movies. And so I spent a lot of years writing music and obviously being part of the music business and being among a sea of other working musicians all trying to chase the same dream. And as a film composer, I literally spent years trying to understand another person's music taste, so a film director. The job of a composer, writing for movies is, profile your director's taste and give them what they want. And I would do that by playing music for them and getting their feedback. And I sort of translate that into musicological information. It's like taste profiling. And go back to my recording studio and use that information, which was musicological, to write a new piece of music. That kernel is what prompted the idea eventually one day of the Music Genome Project, which is the foundation for Pandora. And that was back in 1999, so a long time ago. And so that was kind of the first, I think, origination of the idea. So happened 1999, Silicon Valley, not a bad time to take a shot at something. I mean, everybody was founding companies, and I shared the idea with a friend, and he said, "Hey man, let's see if we can do something with this." And kind of almost before I knew it, I sort of quit my composing, wrote a business plan, tried to raise money, and then raised some seed capital in March of 2000, and we were off to the races.
All right, so this is between, you have the idea, and then 99 hits, and you talk to a friend. So is the friend the co-founder?
Yes, there were two, yeah.
Okay, so let's go get some money. Let's write a business plan.
Yeah.
Did you or either of the friends have any experience doing this? If so, to what level?
Well, so John, who I first shared it with, had already started and sold a business. So yeah, he came to this with some experience. I'd never done it before.
Okay, so you had somebody with a bit of background. And
yeah, he kind of kickstarted the whole thing. So he sort of knew the nuts and bolts of getting going. Our third co-founder was a guy named Will Glazer, who was a technologist. So he brought the computer science piece to this and the mathematics that eventually really shaped the product. But yeah, we had a starter kit.
Okay. So did he have a network of people in Silicon Valley, of venture capitalists and so forth? I mean, because that's the one question that I'm asking a lot of the new startups that we're talking to is, well, how do you start? Like literally, what's the process? We always read headlines that so and so received X amount of venture capital in this round, but to the average person, what does that mean? What is the actual process? And a few people we've talked to have said, well, you know what, it's not even venture capital at the beginning. Yeah. It's going to friends and family. The guy from this company called Capsule down in Southern California said, the biggest thing for me was going to my friends and family, getting 25 grand from my uncle, and feeling this responsibility that I can't lose the money. So what was the process? Did you guys just start knocking on people's doors? You weren't Googling people back in '99, probably.
No.
So how did you literally get the first dollars, and where did they come from?
It was just that. It was friends and family. I mean, there was a small network of investors from John and Will, but they weren't really investing in this stage and in this space. So we pretty quickly had to go to people that we knew, and it was a matter of, okay, I'm going to open my own Rolodex, which wasn't even electronic at the time, and I'm going to just, who do I know who might know somebody that would be interested in investing, and we cobbled together that round of financing largely from friends and family, and as you said, felt from the very beginning an enormous obligation to that money. We were going to make it happen one way or another because of the sort of investment that people have made in us.
Where were you doing this? Like literally, where was this being done?
Well, we were based out of San Francisco, and the money came from kind of all over the country. I mean, friends and families spread out around the country. And when we ultimately raised that financing, the first office we had was a studio apartment in South San Francisco. Classic South of Market story.
That's so awesome. So it literally it wasn't founded in an apartment, but the beginnings of Pandora. And at that time, it probably wasn't even called Pandora.
No.
Just the Music Genome Project. There's a South of Market apartment in San Francisco.
With thick black shag carpeting.
And you paid rent on it.
Yes,
What was the rent in '99?
Boy.
Roughly.
I think it was probably $400 or $500 a month.
It would be probably, a studio, probably $1,800 now?
Yeah, at least
like that?
4 or 5 times that.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. So when does it become, how long does it take for it to become Pandora? And you're like, okay, was the interesting thing to do radio? So take us there, okay? We're in the apartment, and this is a business now, but it's not Pandora yet, and it's probably not even radio yet. Where are we going?
Yeah, there's sort of two real big chapters to this company. There's the part of it that is pre-Pandora as a company, and then the Pandora on. And the first part, which was called 4 years, or 4.5 years, we built this technology, and the idea was to license it as a recommendation tool. That was really our original model, that we were going to build a music discovery or music navigation piece of software that other people would use.
And in and of itself, that's valuable. You look at Amazon's recommendation tool, you look at Netflix's, you look at Pandora's now, which powers your system, but that in and of itself.
Yeah, and we thought, look, there's this huge number of businesses that are all trying to sort of provide intelligent navigation to their customers through music catalogs. It's an interesting target to go after. Now, we launched in March of 2000, which was right when everything kind of fell off a cliff. So we went into the storm and really essentially just hung on for dear life. I mean, we essentially survived, is all I could say, of those first 4 years. We experimented with lots of different business models. We spent a good amount of that time without salary, over 2 years of it not taking salary, and just sort of trying to cobble together something to keep us going. It wasn't until literally 2004 that we received a sort of a fresh infusion of capital and kind of repurposed the company and launched a new Pandora. So the first 4 years were, kind of the trial of Job for us.
So were you playing at night, playing music and stuff?
I was working at night. I mean, we worked 7 days a week from early in the morning until we are headed to pillow, early in the morning. It was nonstop.
Wow. I was actually working down the street in '99 until 2001, and I was calling on CEOs and VPs of sales, mainly at newly public companies, and they were spending money like it was going out of style.
Yeah,
a lot of those guys got rich, but a lot of those guys didn't do very well. So even though I was benefiting at that time, I wasn't impacted by the crash all that much. I remember when it happened, and it was like a trap door shutting. People that were just saying, here's our credit card number, charge us $50,000. They wouldn't give you $5,000 if it was the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah, we spent a lot of that time feeling like the kid outside the house knocking on the window, looking in and seeing this incredible party going on inside that we didn't get to participate in. Because there was, like you said, when we arrived, it was on the heels of a huge amount of big funding activity. So a lot of companies were flush with cash, huge war chests, and it was spent in a hurry. In those next couple of years, we never really had much money. I mean, we were bootstrapping from the beginning. I think on the one hand, it was painful to see well-funded companies and for us to be going through this really difficult process. At the same time, I think that it forced us to be really rigorous about what we're doing, how we spend money, and sort of what's the long-term plan. We didn't have any kind of a buffer just so that we could spend through our mistakes.
Right. So when does radio come into the picture?
So 4 years in, we had managed to survive, had not built any kind of a business, but had created this Music Genome Project asset that at that point had become pretty substantial because people had kept working all along. And it was a really effective way to connect songs and sort of build recommendations. And had the great fortune of hiring a fellow named Joe Kennedy, who I brought on to be our CEO in '04, following this big financing round. And we all sort of went through this big kind of strategic review of, what do we do with this? And really, Joe kind of pushed the company, said, hey, this is an interesting space over here. Radio, it's healthy, it's got a proven business model, and this technology is perfectly suited for that application, for building playlists. And so we kind of launched a skunkworks project called One-Click Custom Radio while we were doing sort of kiosks and online retail and this sort of legacy business. And I'd say that I think 6 or 9 months later, we had our internal prototype. And I think the first time we saw it, we said, wow, that's where we should be. And I think pretty quickly the whole company just sort of shifted over and we just became Pandora in name and in product.
And now here you are. It's a pretty impressive.
It just went like that. I mean, to contrast that second chapter with the first chapter is, it was like night and day.
Were there a lot of fights in the first chapter? I mean, like did you guys always get along? I can't imagine you're staying up till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and then getting back up to work. People had to be in bad moods, and it's not going well. You're not making any money. You feel like you're going to fail. Maybe at some point you had to. I think you go through all different types of emotional cycles. Was there any? Did you come to blows in the apartment ever, or are you guys able to maintain great friendships all the way through it?
Well, it was enormously stressful, no doubt about it. And yeah, you've certainly under stress. You don't always get along. But I'll say that I think one thing that kept us through that was there was a surprising level of a consistent level of support and harmony, or let's say commitment to what we were doing. And I think that was the cornerstone of surviving, because not only did the sort of founders have to sort of keep that together, but then you had to motivate a group of employees to work for a long, long time without getting paid. Right. And I think we never lost a sense of common purpose and a sort of sense of respect. Not everybody stuck around, But we managed. I think that's why we survived. You know, when most companies, the chances of Pandora being here today are, I gotta think, like 1 in a million. I mean, given where we started and what we went through to get here, it's very, very unlikely.
And now, like I said before, you're here, and this is something that floored me. Maybe it shouldn't, but I'm not a very good camera person, and we're shooting this on an iPhone, so I can't walk over to where Tim's desk is. But we're kind of in a common area. You have a whiteboard here, and it's just a nice little place to sit down and relax. But just off to the left, there's a bunch of cubicles, and you're set up in a cubicle.
Yeah.
You don't have an office.
No.
Why not?
No reason to, you know. I mean, offices are bad for company, I think, culture. Mm-hmm. I think it's intermixing and leveling the organization is really vital.
I don't want to embarrass you. I mean, I really don't. But I think that a lot of people would say, well, that's weird. I mean, is this common in companies like yours? I'm sure it happens elsewhere, but I got to think that, you know, Zuckerberg has his own office or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that there is a growing consensus that offices function better when there's more, when there's not homogeneity is the wrong word, but kind of an evenness about the physical, sort of hierarchical stuff. I think companies are heading in that direction. And I found over the years that the more horizontal your organization is, so the happier people are, the more productive they are, the more committed they are, the better they feel about sort of every part of the business. So,
one of the things you had mentioned to me in one of the previous times that we talked was that you've been around Jeff Bezos a few times from Amazon.
Yeah.
And one of the big things that you like about him is that he's just a humble guy.
Yeah.
And that's why people like to work for him. And I look at Amazon, and I call Amazon a perpetual startup. I look at you guys, I think you're a perpetual startup.
Yeah.
LinkedIn had great earnings last week, perpetual startup. There's always going to be opportunity for these companies to seize, so you're always going to be in startup mode, head down, tunnel vision, people taking shots at you, but there's these signposts you got to get to, and you got to spend money, you got to spend time to get there, and that's the Amazon story. It's been the Amazon story since '99. I don't think there's a lot of turnover at Amazon. You don't hear about executives leaving. And if you could just talk a bit about what you know of Bezos, because he doesn't do a ton of interviews, and how maybe you sort of integrate some of the stuff you learn by watching him into what you guys do over here.
Yeah, so I've met him a number of times over the years. The first one was a long time ago, many, many years ago. And the first time I met him, what struck me first and foremost was the humbleness. And the executives that I really admire, that I know, are mostly folks who are humble. And I think humility has lots of great benefits. I think it's an appealing character trait for people around you, for starters. Generally, you're more generous, you're easier to get along with, it ages better over time. I mean, it's got lots of good things, just pure interpersonally. I also think that humility means that you don't have blind spots the way you would if you're arrogant. You don't take for granted things, that you sort of are always looking for somebody else doing something better. Can I learn from someone else? Humble people tend to listen a lot, and again, the people that I know that I really respect, some of the brightest, most accomplished folks, you'd meet them and you'd never know it. They're all about what can I learn from you, and they're always learning. And that to me is the key to successful companies. And Jeff is like that. I think that he spends his days learning. I think that's also a good way to live. But if you maintain your humility, that doesn't mean that you're not very competitive and ambitious, and you have a vision for where you're going, and are very self-confident. Those are perfectly compatible. But you need to have humility, I think, to thrive, especially in a place that moves as fast as this does.
I think the humility versus being a competitive person is an interesting intersection, because people always say Amazon should buy Netflix, or they should buy Zynga, or somebody should buy Amazon, and I always think that's where you would see his competitiveness come in. Like, listen, we're building this thing, we've built this thing, we know what to do, we know how to do it. we don't want another set of personalities coming in here and throwing this off. So I think in that sense, that's where you'd see kind of the pit bull come out and say, listen, I know what I'm doing here. You're not going to step in. Which brings up something that I'm talking to a lot of the new founders about, is the idea of going public. When you guys came to that point where you decided, okay, we're going to do this, was there any hesitation on your part? Did you feel like, you were Green Day and you were going to stop playing clubs at Oakland and play arenas around the country? People will say selling out. Was there any sense of that on your part, considering your roots as a musician and so forth?
Well, I think there's always trepidation about that kind of a move, because it does change the externalities of your company. You've got a whole different constituency now that's paying attention to what you do, and that actually does impact what you do. Our decision to go public was driven by sort of a couple things. One was the sense that we had attained a certain level of confidence and predictability in our business. There's some fluctuation, as you know, but had a pretty good sense that we were ready for that kind of scrutiny. There have been investors in the company for, at that point, 7 years, and investors deserve a return. If there's one thing that I've appreciated, given where we've come from, the value of money. Don't take that for granted, and we want our investors to be rewarded, as we do employees, to give employees a chance to have some liquidity, buy a home, pay for college, that kind of stuff. Staying private is a luxurious option, I think, but being public also gives you a currency. So I think that, fortunately, we went public on a Wednesday, and I think Thursday was like Tuesday. I don't think the company dramatically changed in some way. I think that, when I walked around the corner on Wall Street and saw the Pandora sign on covering the exchange, I stopped for a moment. I thought, wow, it was really, I was proud of it, very proud of it, and it was I was proud personally, but I was really proud on behalf of everybody too. I knew that everyone in the company had seen that and was, it's an accomplishment. And I think we stopped and we celebrated it as we should have. But I think that the next morning, it wasn't like everybody's attitude changed or the sort of the way we worked changed. I think it's very much the same company.
Must be pretty cool now. You turn on CNBC and you look over the anchor's shoulder when they're at the stock exchange, and 9 times out of 10, there's the Pandora emblem up there, right? Because you guys are traded on the NYSE. Heck, the Street's offices are right across the street, and whenever I go over there and just see the building, it's a cool building to see. I can't imagine having my company's banner, draped over the top of it.
Yeah, it's a special thing.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, Tim Westergren, the co-founder and chief strategy officer of Pandora Radio. We're not at the beach, but we're close. We're in Oakland. Next week, we will actually be on the beach in Santa Monica. We're going to be talking to another founder of a company called Capsule, Cyrus Ferruti, and that'll be next Tuesday here on The Beach Meets the Street. All right. Good stuff. That was awesome, man.
Thanks.